We know just how important it is to make a great first impression during an interview to help your chances in landing a role. And part of that first impression is how you position your unique experience as an individual with a disability.
As recruitment experts, we're delighted to share our knowledge and expertise to help you prepare for your job search process when entering the workforce.
How you position your disability in an interview is crucial. While you are not required to disclose if you have a disability to an employer, should you choose to do so, it's important that you do so in a way that conveys confidence and openness to a prospective employer. As someone who is hard of hearing like myself, I have went the path of not disclosing because I was worried about the stigma that would be associated with having a disability in the workplace. And while I didn't face that barrier during the interview, later on it made it very difficult to bring up the conversation to ask for accommodation. I've learned in my experience that when you are kind of forthcoming about your impairment, whether it be hearing or other, that it really does create that kind of confidence in going into the job and being able to advocate for yourself, as well as ask for accommodation if it's needed. It's also important to note that some employers might be actively looking to hire diverse individuals, so that could give you a leg up during the interview process should you disclose it. However, when you're disclosing if you have a disability, it's important to talk about it as the asset and strength that it truly is. People with disabilities are often the most resilient individuals, and that has kind of built the character that really translates well into being a great worker in any office setting. Some of these kind of traits that have really come from being an individual with a disability could be better time management skills, creative problem solving, working well under pressure, and perseverance. So when you do disclose, make sure that your employer knows that you are an asset to their organization because of your disability and not in spite of it.
How to work with a hiring manager to ask for accommodations. Firstly, you'll want to determine what obstacles you may face in an interview and how a hiring manager may help you overcome them so you know exactly what to ask for. Secondly, you'll want to ask for these ahead of time, well in advance, ideally in writing such as email, so you give the hiring manager ample time to address these requests. Thirdly, don't be afraid to speak up. For example, if you need the chairs repositioned to allow you to lip read during the interview, be sure to ask for this before the interview starts so you can focus solely on the interview itself. You'll also want to be confident when explaining what areas of the role you feel that you'll excel in and what resources you'll need in order to make this happen. It's important to note that these tips go well beyond the interview process and can be applied throughout your employment. Lastly, it's also important to know that employers aren't legally permitted to use your need for accommodations against you when determining your viability for a position.
Preparing for a job interview when you have a disability involves many of the same steps as any other job seeker. But there are some additional considerations to make sure that you present yourself effectively and go into the process feeling as confident as possible. Knowledge is power, and so you want to make sure that you're going into the process knowing your rights, knowing your worth, and being able to speak to your salary expectations, as well as thoroughly researching the organization and the role itself. You also want to make sure that you go into the process being familiar with and having practiced common interview questions. That includes being able to address any potential roadblocks, such as gaps in your resume. While it isn't necessary, you can always choose to pre-disclose your disability, especially if you think it will make you feel more comfortable going into the process having it already been addressed. You can address it in your job application, resume, or cover letter. Last but not least, stay positive. The job search process is challenging and it can take time, but perseverance pays off.
Navigating the work environment with a disability can come with a unique set of challenges. So that is why it's very critical to make sure that you have a good work-life balance. So there's a few strategies that I'd recommend to make sure that you achieve this. So the first thing would be setting boundaries. So having a structured day where you know your specific start time to your work, specific end time, as well as taking breaks in between your work, both mentally and physically, is something that's very critical. Second thing would be prioritizing your health by making your appointments ahead of time so that you know exactly when they're coming and they revolve around your work schedule. That way you're not feeling rushed and you can make them in time. Third thing would be seeking support. So this could be challenging for anyone, but especially if you have a disability, it may be a little bit more challenging in terms of people maybe not understanding where you're coming from or not having enough information about that specific disability. So it's always very critical to have a support group at work as well as at home to make sure that you don't feel like you're by yourself or on a lonely island. The last thing that I would do is make use of available resources that are offered by your employer. A lot of people don't really know some of the benefits that they have. So this could include therapy, certain platforms where you can seek advice. So making sure that you're taking advantage of this will help you in achieving a good work and life balance.